In this video, we are going to talk about money and banking. Previously, we've already discussed monetary policy and how a central bank conducts monetary policy. Um, this week, what we're going to talk about is actually money and banking and how some of those decisions made by the Fed on monetary policy um, result in these changes in the credit market and to the money supply. So before we get into that, what is money? Well, money is just very simply an asset that people use to make and receive payments when buying and selling goods and services. Okay. So money typically has three functions: this medium of exchange, store of value, and unit of account. And for something to be a good commodity for money, a useful commodity for money, they have to possess e- um, each of these three functions of money. So, excuse me, um, when looking at what these functions are, well, the first function is probably something that comes readily when thinking about money, the medium of exchange. And basically, a medium of exchange is just something that is generally accepted or traded as means of payment for goods and services. Okay. Uh, you know, in the past, in history, these have been things like shells. Initially, like the initial currency was cattle or livestock was used. Why? Because it was generally accepted by trading partners. Um, because of that, it was a good at the time, at least, two, 3,000, 4,000 years ago, something that's generally accepted that's also has use like cattle or livestock is a generally a good form of a medium of exchange. Additionally, money is going to want to have a store of value. The second function of money is going to be the store of value, where the store of value um, essentially allows money to be used in the future. It's some form or some asset that maintains its value through time. So something like I don't know, a fruit or something that deteriorates or depreciates over time that loses its value over time wouldn't be a good store of value. So that wouldn't be a good asset or commodity used uh, as a form of money. The last function of money is this unit of account. And this unit of account basically allows the comparison of different goods and services. Uh, you can think of it as like a measuring device or a yardstick to determine a good's value and then be able to compare it to other goods. But basically, this third function is just um, is to allow the value of different goods and services to be compared across one another. Okay. Money, when initially developed, was backed by a precious commodity, typically gold. Um, but for money to have its value, or money to have value, it doesn't necessarily need to be backed by some physical commodity. And currencies that, including the U.S. dollar, that are not backed by a physical commodity are called a fiat money. Okay, um, and so the reason money still has value, or fiat money still has value, even if it's not backed by a precious commodity, is because if we imagine a world where we didn't have money, then we'd have this required double coincidence of wants, where if I'm trading with somebody, instead of just using money or a dollar bill, I have to trade with my trading partner something that that trading partner wants. So if I have oranges and my trading partner has bananas, in order for me to get those bananas, my trading partner needs to want oranges. If they don't, then I don't have a commodity to trade with them in order to get the bananas. In that case, I'd have to find somebody else to trade with that has what my trading partner wants. The point being is, without money, it's really difficult um, to conduct business. to trade with one another, because both trading partners again need this double coincidence of wants. And so when you have money that's generally accepted, then you don't have to conduct these large search costs to find a trading partner that has what your other trading partner wants, and then you can trade with, or however many iterations of that dynamic that need to occur. All of that is avoided when you have money. And so the value of a fiat money comes from not having to go through those search costs when conducting business. So money does not need to be backed by a precious commodity in order to have value. We kind of have an idea now what is considered money, or what are some of the functions that an asset needs to possess to be considered money. So what is considered money? What is part of the money supply? Well, the money supply, there's lots of different categories for the money supply. Here we're just going to look at M1 and M2, but there's also M3, M4, and additional stocks of money. The differences between these stocks of money, this M1 and M2, is based on an asset's liquidity. And so, just as a reminder, liquidity is how easily something can be used for immediate payment. Okay? And so when we look at M1, well, M1, first off, is a subset of M2. Okay? So it means everything in M1 is included in M2, but not everything in M2 is included in M1. Because M1 is the most liquid, quote unquote, stock of money. And specifically, M1 includes currency, which all stocks of money, M1, M2, et cetera, are going to include currency. Additionally, M1 also includes checking accounts or deposits in checking accounts, and a really small portion of M1 is coming from traveler's checks. The reason checking accounts are included in M1 as well as currency is because you can use these funds to immediately pay for something. Checking account, you can, if you have a checking account deposit, you can use those funds, you can write a check or use a debit card to pay for goods and services. Same with currency. You have cash in your pocket, you can use that dollar, you can use those coins to pay for something immediately. There is no conversion of an asset to a more liquid asset. Okay? Why? Because M1 is as liquid as it can be, or the securities, the assets in M1 are as liquid as they can be. Again, M2 also includes M1. So within the money stock M2, currency is included, checking accounts are included, but it also includes deposits in savings accounts. Now, there's a slight difference between savings accounts and deposits and checking accounts. Saving accounts have to be transferred over to your checking account before they can be used for payment. That little bit of a transfer, that little bit of a movement of funds from a savings account to a checking account means savings accounts are a little bit less liquid than checking accounts, but still pretty liquid. And if you needed to make a payment using your savings accounts, generally you can do so pretty quickly. So typically when we talk about the money stock, we're going to be talking about M2. Okay? We're going to be talking about currency, checking accounts, and mostly savings accounts. The big difference between M1 and M2 is mostly savings accounts. Yes, some CDs and money market mutual funds are going to be included, but the big difference, the big proportion of M2 is coming from savings accounts. Okay. So when the Fed conducts monetary policy, what they're doing is they're not directly influencing M1 and M2. Rather, the Fed is impacting the monetary base. Okay? And the monetary base, this MB, this includes all currency in circulation, which is part of M1 and M2, but it also includes all deposits that banks make at the Fed, so all of their reserves. Okay? So this piece of this Venn diagram that's part of the monetary base but not currency, these are banks' deposits at the Federal Reserve. Okay, so when the Fed conducts monetary policy, what they do is they increase the monetary base. When the monetary base increases, this drives down interest rates because now banks have more reserves on hand. With lower interest rates, households and firms are willing to take out a loan at a now lower rate because of banks having more reserves. When that occurs, we see increases in checking deposits, savings deposits, and the level of currency overall. Why? Households, firms borrowing more money or borrowing more reserves. Those reserves are then converted into currency and into checking accounts, into savings deposits. All of that increases the money supply and leads to an overall growth in the money supply. Okay? What has the money stock done over time? Well, it's during recessions, typically what do we see? We see an expansionary policy, which should yield an increase in the money stock. So what happens? Well, let's look at the Great Recession in 2008. If we look at M2 in blue here, about midway through the recession, interest rates kept dropping. What did we see? We see this uptick in the money supply. It's not a huge uptick, especially compared to where we're at in 2020, but we do see evidence of expansionary monetary policy by an increase in the money stock. Moving to the most current recession in 2020, well, what have we seen? We've seen huge increases in the supply of money because of this very strong expansionary policy being conducted by the Federal Reserve. It's a massive jump in the supply of money. So yes, it's good to stimulate the economy, but it's going to have effects on the inflation rate, which is something we'll talk about in the next video when we talk about the quantity theory of money.